So our first presenter this evening is a local presenter. She's been sitting right down here representing ConocoPhillips for a number of years. And her name is Glynis Strause. Glynis Holmes Strause. She's a member of the Live Oak County Historical Commission and the Live Oak Historical Foundation. She's lived in Live Oak County since she was 18 months old and has learned to appreciate all that it has to offer. After leaving the county to attend Howard Payne University and the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, she returned to teach speech at Texas A&I before it changed its name. After 34 years of teaching, I lost my place, and being an administrator at Coastal Bend College, 12 years ago, she became the Stakeholder Relations Director for the Eagle Ford Shale for ConocoPhillips. She was married to Tommy Strause until his death in 2010. They have 2 children and 4 grandchildren. And let's please welcome Glynis Holmes Strause to the Dobie Dichos stage.
I'm pleased to be here today, and I think I've come to every Dobie Dichos, and I love being here. In 1986, I started telling Christmas stories at my church for what we call the Women of the Church Christmas Party. Well, that was 38 years ago, and 38 Christmas stories later. Last year, I was sitting down here and I wonder if J. Frank Dobie ever wrote a Christmas story. So I started looking. Turns out he did. I found a book that I thought was going to be it, A Christmas Remembrance, that was written in 1951. It isn't about Christmas at all, but it's about charming Mexican folk tales. Charming, but not about Christmas. Then in a book called, or a pamphlet called The Books in Christmas, Dobie in 1950 remembers the gifts that he had been given at Christmas and how reading books that he got at Christmas fed his love of language. This is what he had to say about books in Christmas. In my childhood on a ranch out of reach of bookstores and libraries, Christmas was always the time of oranges and new books. The oranges went fast. Some of the books will be in my house and in me when I die. That's my favorite sentence. We children knew positively that there would be books on the Christmas tree and in our stockings. We knew of certain books that we wanted, and we had the before Christmas pleasure of speculating of what known and unknown titles Santa Claus might bring. Tells you a little bit about where he got to love language. Finally, I found the 1953 Stories of Christmas and the Bowie Knife. And what I came to understand that these were Christmas gifts that the Steck Company, the publisher, put together. So I will read from Stories of Christmas today. In the preface, the editors of Steck write this: in wanting to bring you a distinctively different Christmas greeting for 1953, as well as one that is typically Texan, the Steck Company turned quite naturally to Texas's most distinguished folklorist, J. Frank Dobie. His writings for the past quarter century have turned the attention of people in many lands to the rich folklore of the Southwest. Dobie's recollections of 3 boyhood Christmases begin this volume. Thus, with quite a glance backward, the Steck Company brings you warm greetings for 1953. Anybody remember it? In the words of Dobie, generous feelings and cheering words are never trite. Merry Christmas. Now from the book. It is a benediction of nature that generally we remember more vividly and oftener what has given us happiness rather than what has given us pain. Christmas in particular is the time of recollection. And now I am recollecting Christmases even more remote in character from modern Christmases than they are in time. We lived on a ranch, 27 horse miles from our shopping center. That was Beeville, Texas, which later became our family home. 3 or 4 times a year, a wagon went to town and hauled out supplies. But the biggest haul was just before Christmas. As I look back, those days seem to have been days of great plenitude, not because of anything the family prosperity, for we lived meagerly, but because of necessity of local stockpiling. Sugar came in barrels, molasses came in kegs, flour in barrels or in 48-pound sacks, beans and coffee in bushel sacks. The coffee had to be roasted and ground. Lard in 50-pound cans, tomatoes, salmon, and other canned goods in cases. Then, at Christmas time, there was a large wooden bucket of mixed candy, enough for us 6 children, for our visiting cousins, and for the children of several Mexican families living on the ranch who were farmers. Each of these families received also a new blanket and a sack of fruit. We had handmade candy not infrequently, but Christmas was the only time of year when it snowed candy. There were no chocolates, as I recollect, but a mixture of lemon drops and an assortment of variously shaped hunks of sugar, both hard and gummy, variously colored, alloyed, and flavored, peppermint being dominant. Christmas was also distinguished by apples, oranges, raisins on stems, almonds, walnuts, pecans, and a coconut or two. We ate some of the coconut as it was broken out, but the main function was for it to be grated and mixed with sliced oranges and sugar for ambrosia, an inevitable Christmas dinner, as inevitable as the turkey at Thanksgiving. Nobody then dreamed of having fruit every morning with breakfast. Oranges, apples, raisins, and nuts were put into stockings and hung on the Christmas tree. They were a rare treat. These fruits and nuts left a stronger impression on my mind than all of the other gifts associated with Christmases, except books, firecrackers, Roman candles, and my first new saddle. There were bugles, toy trains, and dolls for the girls, but we, the boys, at least had so much fun making our own toys that no bought toy had left any impression on my memory. Christmas was a time for new pocket knives, and very useful they were. My father taught us how to whittle water wheels, which could be run only when the occasional rain made long, hollow run. The axle of the wheel might be a piece of wood or a section of dried cornstalk, less durable, but much more easily fitted with paddles than hardwood. The toy bugles would not split the air as brightly as the cane whistles that we cut off of our own fishing poles. We may have had colored balloons at some Christmas, but I recollect the ones made from bladders. Hog killing time is cold weather. The chief prize for us from every hog or every calf or cow or steer that was butchered was their bladder. A human mouth was the only air pump for blowing up this homemade contrived balloon. Held, air extended near a fire, it would keep on expanding until the material was very thin and dry, and then came the climax, an explosion. Nobody wanted to part with that bladder balloon, but that great explosion could not be resisted. I never heard of a 4th of July fireworks until I was nearly grown. Firecrackers and Roman candles were much a part of Christmas as ambrosia. The firecrackers would be set off during the day, but the Roman candles were there for darkness, where everybody watched the pyrotechnics. They vanished all too quickly, like most other beautiful things, but not from the great reality called memory. There were toy pistols and air guns, but a new pair of rubbers for the slingshot gave us much satisfaction. At one time, we got more satisfaction from lead bullets being gouged out of the live oak trees than from any other form of shooting. Our house was on the edge of a grove of scores of live oak trees, some of them large and old. When Uncle Ed Dubose, my mother's half-brother, came in the fall to hunt, and again at Christmas time with the family, he freely spent ammunition perfecting his marksmanship. His targets were tree trunks. He was an indefatigable treasure hunter also, and he never found a bonanza comparable to what he left us children in the form of lead. From solder melted off of tin cans, and from now and then a haul of Babbitt from worn-out windmills, we minted dollars. We melted our metal in a large spoon over the outdoor fire and poured the liquid into a round wooden bluing box, wherein it quickly cooled and solidified. Bluing was for laundry in those days, and it came in powdered form for dissolving in water in the wooden boxes, with the top screwed on about the diameter of $1. The free coinage was limited only by a supply of crude metal. The more canned goods we consumed, the more old bullets we could find, the higher the range of our coinage. The two principal uses of these dollars were from pitching into holes and holes in the ground, and for buying cattle, horses, sheep, and goats from each other. Each of us had a play ranch enclosed by miniature fences. Twine, that was our barbed wire, struck on sticks stuck in the ground for post. Our cattle were tips of the horns that had been sawed off of the cattle in the chute in the big picket cow pens about 100 miles from our house. Our horses were spools from which my mother and our neighbors had used the empty thread in endless sewing. Our goats were empty snail shells. Our sheep were oat galls. Sheep and goats were very plentiful and therefore of very low value. Cattle and horses were harder to come by. With running irons made of baling wire and heated to a red-hot fire, we branded the cattle, the sheep, and the horses. But we could not brand the snail shell goats. Can you picture it? We made long trains of flat rectangular sardine cans and coupled together with pieces of wire to haul the stock from ranch to ranch. Our dog, Old Joe, named after the beautiful Joe, the wonderful hero of a favorite book, made a very unsatisfactory engine to pull the freight train. We hitched green lizards snared with a hair of a horse tail to a single sardine can or to a cardboard matchbox that served as a wagon. Lizards never made tractable teams. I wasn't yet reading when one Christmas when I received an illustrated book with a linen cover about an owl that hooted. On demand, my father read it aloud over and over. We could hear owls hooting in the live oak trees at night all year round. And my father could talk owl. Every year he read the book, he had to tell us what the owl says in words long drawn out from deep down. I cook myself. Who cooks for you? There were very few conversationalists to whom I'd rather listen than to a hoot owl. And often to this day, his lonely and beautiful hooing takes me back to the Christmas of my childhood, to a child's book, and to my father's voice. There were no commercial Santa Clauses in the country, so far as I know. The only Santa Claus for me was my father. At an early age, I learned his identity, but that knowledge had no effect on the great illusion. My father cut the Christmas tree out in the pasture, either a comely live oak or maybe a knockaway, and brought it in secretly. After it was hung with gifts and lighted with little candles, we all gathered to behold it. Santa Claus would bound in all white and red, as cheery as his ruddy complexion, reindeer country manners, otherworld talk, and contagious spirits as St. Nicholas in the night before Christmas. In a disguised voice, he called out the names of the packages and added joy to each gift in a way that he presented it. Then he would disappear, and presently Papa would come in and claim his own presents with much eagerness as we had received ours. In memory as well as actuality, Christmas is the time for coming home. Many a father lives for these homecomings of a scattered brood, but it is the mothers who make them. Faye Yeager in I Remember suggests something of almost universal contrast. My father rode a horse and carried a gun. He swapped for a living and fought for his fun. I remember his spurs, a gleam in the sun. My father was always going somewhere, to rodeo, to market, or cattleman's fair. I remember my mother, her hand in the air. My mother had been dead 5 Christmases now. She was 87 years old when she died and had been a widow for 28 of those years. Maybe every mother is a matriarch. Matriarchy was very strongly pronounced in my family. She invariably wanted her children and then grandchildren and great-grandchildren to come home for Christmas, and they generally got there. If I live to be 100, at every Christmas, I'll be remembering the brightness of her face, the eagerness of her greeting, and the love of her conduct and her cooking. With wishes to you for a good Christmas and good books, Bertha and Frank Dobie.
How about that, huh? Pretty cool stuff.
It's not a story I'd ever heard before.
Well, me either until you told me I'm going to read this, and if it's all right. And so I read it. I went, oh yeah, that's cool. So Glynis, you are the president of the Dobie West Performing Arts Theater in George West.
Right.
Would you please tell the audience here a little bit about the theater and especially the museum in the foyer?
Okay. The Dobie West Theater was a movie theater from 1946 to 1964, which makes it
old.
And it's a baby boomer theater is what I call it.
Yeah.
And it was, I remember going to see movies, Zorro and Gulliver's Travels, when I was in primary school. And then it closed and it got into a lot of disrepair. And in about around 2000, we were having Story Fest, and the lawyer next door was not happy with the disrepair of the theater and what it was doing to his building. So a group got together. The people who owned the building then, which was a church, they were from Aransas Pass, gave it to Story Fest for $10. I found the deed this week.
$10.
And so it didn't cost $10 to refurbish it, I can tell you that. And since I've been there, we have put a new roof on it and done a lot of other things. But the Dobie Museum in there started when the board decided to name the theater, which was the West Theater, the Dobie West Theater, for our native son, who, and they looked around and there was nothing in Live Oak County named for Dobie. So they decided to add that name to the West Theater. And so in there, when that was known, I talked to Marianne Pavlik, who was the first president of the board, and to other members of the board. And when Dobie was added to the name, people started started showing up with, as she said, stuff. Very eloquently, stuff started showing up at the theater. And sometimes people would be there, and sometimes they'd just find a box of stuff. Some of it was rocks from the ranch. Patty Reagan made a beautiful cross from rocks at the ranch. First edition books are there, letters, news articles about J. Frank and some of his travels around the world, pictures of him, and many of the pamphlets that where I found. Mary Margaret asked me, where did you find these? Well, some of them were actually in the theater, and so I borrowed them. If you're any board members, I put them back. But I borrowed them and read them because I saw that they had Christmas on them. So we have a very interesting collection of his books, of pictures of him, of rocks from the ranch. So, and a geologist told me one time, well, you can tell they're from the Dobie Ranch because that's where those rocks come from. I'm not sure that's a true story, if you want to know the truth.
It sounded good.
Sounds good, and we're claiming it, right? The storytelling capital of Texas.
Absolutely.
And that's my liar's contest. So, when the theater is open, you're welcome to come and view it. And if you want to, our webpage is Dobie West Theater. You're welcome to give me a call or call the theater, and we'll open it so that you can actually see what's going on there.
Well, with that in mind, Glynis, what do you think J. Frank Dobie's legacy in Live Oak County is?
Mary Margaret asked me that question the other day, and I went, well, let me think about that a minute. So I did write down some things. Okay. Well, first of all, he is our native son, and that is part of his legacy. His writings of the brush country, we wouldn't be having this event if somebody didn't like his writings.
That's true.
So his legacy are his words and his love for language. And I don't know if you got that in what I was reading, but sometimes he can turn a phrase and you just go, oh, yeah, that's right? Mm-hmm. And he really captures how you feel about something. There are 2 historical markers in Live Oak County about J. Frank Dobie. One is at the courthouse because it was down by Lagardo and people kept stealing it. I don't know if you've ever done a historical marker, but they're not cheap, and so it was moved.
Heavy.
And they're heavy, and I don't know how they stole them, but they did. So we got a new one and moved it to the courthouse where the sheriff
in George West,
so that on the courthouse lawn, so they're probably not going to get stolen with the police officers around there.
Yeah.
And also there is another smaller marker down at his ranch, so that's a part of his legacy.
Yeah.
One day I was driving in Austin by the university, and I saw that his home was there. And I got out and walked around, and that's a part of his legacy because writers can use his home to as we were hearing earlier, not only Pisano, but his actual home.
It's the Michener Center for Writers.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so that's a part of his legacy. The Dobie West Performing Arts Theater is a part of his legacy because it's right there on the name. You can see it and on the website, and we do have some information on Dobie on our website. And I think the biggest legacy of Dobie is that he resides in our minds because you can't look at a Longhorn without thinking of a book. You can't look at a Roadrunner without thinking of a book. And so his legacy is everywhere we are around here because this is what he wrote about.
That's right. Thank you very much, Glynis.
Okay.
Let's give Glynis Strause one more big round of applause, please. Thank you.
I have to tell you one more thing, Mary Margaret.
Okay, what?
One more.
All right.
So I went to the theater files and I started, looking for information. How did we name it that? What is some? And I found this research paper that was a research paper, not an AI research paper.
Real thing.
Real, what do you call them?
Handwriting?
Real handwriting, cursive writing, 2 copies, one in pencil, one in pen, with all of the sources cited in the correct manner, and the teacher had made red marks on it. And it was done by Miss Ernell Sleva, who is now Meyer, and she works at the Goodie Box. And this is a really good history of Dobie, and I'm holding on to it in the theater.
Thank you, Glynis.
Mexico